Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. Today is Friday, but normally I do like my comic cover challenge thing, and I'm actually going to put that on pause just for this week, and I'm going to return to it next week. So if you waiting for the cover challenge, wait one more week. I'm gonna do one next week. But I kind of wanted to do a video about a review. And I always get in trouble when I do my reviews, but this review should be interesting. Um, I watched Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, and I to be open and honest, always I am, but I generally watch a lot of YouTube stuff, and I watch more the conservative side of that, right? And before even Rings of Power came out, people were trashing it, like, and rightly so in many ways, because it really did try to be harsh with the Tolkien tradition. Like, Tolkien had a sort of mindset when he created his Lord of the Rings saga, and he really wanted it to be a saga about England and about English history, and so a lot of it was set in that kind of mindset that it's traditional, it's like of the past. So when they do all this kind of woke stuff, like throwing gender bending and race swapping and all that kind of stuff, it kind of goes in the face of the tradition that Tolkien had tried to put into his books. Now, with all that being said, I always, even though I had this sort of maybe negative opinion coming in, that from all this influence, I still try to go in with an open mind and have like an opinion based on actually watching the show. I always believe in actually watching the show before making a criticism or making, like, I didn't dogpile like everyone else did before the show even came out. I always think it's good to watch the thing before making those kind of comments. So I watched it. And the way I watch things is kind of interesting because I work really long hours. So when I'm not doing all this, I'm working. I just work all the time and try to keep my business afloat, basically. Crazy times now. And because I'm working all the time, what I do is I'll have whatever video it is that I'm watching, I'll have it in the sort of the background, like not background, but on the side, and then I'll be working as well. So in that kind of context, I'm reviewing Lord of the Rings. And the reason I say that, and that's really important that you understand that context, is if I had put my 100% focus on Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power, I should say, my review would be very different. And the reason I say that is it wouldn't be enough to capture my attention. It wouldn't be enough by itself to be that interesting. Where, like, there's shows that I watch and like I'll stop my work and just watch the show because it's so engaging, it's so involved. This was not. Lord of the Rings of Power was not engaging for the most part. And that's probably my biggest criticism of the show, that it's slow moving. People always say slow burn, but I've watched 2 hours of it now. It's beyond the slow burn. But I don't feel like I know the characters yet. And that's 2 hours in. There's a bunch of characters that I just, I don't know. I'll say some of the good things. Let me say good things first. I'll be good first, and then I'll get into the criticisms. So the first thing I gotta say is they do actually develop several storylines, and that can be intriguing. There is a bit of a mystery. Like, there's this one town that they discover that has a hole in it, like a hole, and all the people that were in this town are gone. And they believe that they must have gone into this hole and been maybe taken away. So there's a bit of intrigue there. That's one storyline. That's with the elf and and the human girl, that kind of romantic relationship going on there. And then there's the other storyline, which is the Halfwits or Harfwits or whatever they're called. And they have a storyline where there's a man who basically came down in a meteor and he's like, this big giant guy compared to them that, he doesn't speak. He's kind of looks like he's a homeless guy and he's kind of like this weird star child that they're trying to communicate with and figure out what he's all about. And I'm guessing he kind of reminds me of Gandalf. So I think that's maybe the spoiler, like that or the thing that they're hinting at. I don't know if that's going to be the case that he is Gandalf, but it seems like that's where it's going. So, there is that kind of weird thing. And that's maybe intriguing. Is it Gandalf? Is it something else? And there's a little bit of maybe intrigue there. And then there's the other story with Galadriel. And Galadriel is on this centuries-long quest to hunt down the evil Dark Lord. And Sauron, or whatever, I always get his name mixed up. Solomon? Yeah, Sauron. So she's searching him down, trying to like eradicate him and all of his disciples. And there's like that political intrigue with her and her brethren who basically, they don't want the war to continue on. They just want it to go away. And they feel like, you can use something to blow out a candle, or you can actually use that same air to spread flame. And that was kind of an analogy that they used with her, that maybe her actions of chasing him down and trying to eradicate him could actually lead to the very fire that they're trying to put out. And I thought that was actually a cool analogy. So these are the positives. I'm trying to keep to the positives for now. So there's a bit of story there, but they kind of pass her off and they force her to go to the Elven lands, where she's going to basically die. Like they just send her off in a boat. So that's that storyline. And there's one more storyline, which is Aragorn, or is it not Aragorn? What's his name? The other Eldor, what's his name? Whatever his name was, he was, the main elf guy in the Lord of the Rings and also in this, and I'll remember his name in a minute. So, Eldor, okay, I'll remember his name. But the point is, his storyline is that he's trying to convince the dwarf king, who used to be a friend, to join with him to make this ring of power. And the reason they're trying to make these rings of power is they think that if they can make these rings of power, basically, they can actually prevent future problems that they are experiencing. They think that these rings can be used to basically bring good into the world and some kind of stability. So that's really that storyline, and it's semi interesting. Actually, I kind of enjoy that storyline maybe the most of the four storylines, because it's you get to see the dwarves in a different way than you normally do in Lord of the Rings. So those are all those are all the storylines, and those are the positives. That there is some intrigue there. Of the four storylines, it's actually the relationship between the elf and the dwarf king that you really get a sense of the difference of the elves and how they live, and that's something I actually can appreciate, because one of the things with the elves, and they kind of talk about this and they hint at it a whole bunch of times, is they live a really long time. They're basically immortal. And when you're immortal, 20 years pass and you think nothing of it. Like if you're living for a few 100,000 years, 20 years is nothing. It's just like a blink. But when the elf guy comes back to this dwarf king, 20 years has passed, and he's still thinking, oh, we're bestie buddies, we're really close. And this dwarf guy's like, well, 20 years passed, where were you? Like, we're supposed to be good buds, where were you? And he's all upset that he missed out on his children being born, on his marriage, on so many things. And he feels like he's been rejected as a friend. And there's that kind of relationship. And it's kind of interesting. I think I just like that idea of the elves being a little bit clueless about how they might be a little bit too aloof. And I think that's interesting. I find that dynamic a little interesting. So I kind of can relate to that. Not that I live for 1,000 years or anything like that, but I just relate to that kind of idea. So that's the positives, that there is some cool things going on there. Now, the negatives. Okay, so first I gotta address the woke issue. And actually, I'm gonna say for the most part, and I'm very sensitive. Like, people always comment when I talk about wokeness, and they say, oh, you're probably just too sensitive. I am very sensitive to the whole woke thing. And I actually do think that they are tarnishing the legacy of Tolkien. But with that being said, like, always listen to the full thing. I think that the wokeness isn't too bad for the most part. There are scenes that were very, very painful to watch. There's one where they're in the tavern and the elf guy is there, and you see the black elf for the very first time, Alrondir, I think his name is Alrondir, and you see him for the first time, and there's this evil white racist, or literally race in this case, the elves versus the humans, white guy, and he comes up, oh, you, and then he uses like a racial slur against the elves. Why don't you get over the past? And kind of hinting at that slavery connection. It's like, it's just so on the nose that it's a little bit painful. Well, no, it's extremely painful. That was one scene that was just, why? Like, why did you do that? But that was the one time that I felt like it was really in your face. The other time that there was a really kind of wokey scene, and a lot of the people that I've watched criticize this other scene, is the scene with the ice troll. So there's a scene where they come into this, they're searching for Sauron, and they're searching, and they get to this mountain, and in the mountain they get to this cave, and in the cave is an ice troll. Okay, so explanation. So the ice troll basically swats like two of these elves that Galadriel is with, and she has like her little troop of there's like 10 of them or something. It swats two of them like as if they're just bugs, like just poof. And they were like, oh, they're wimpy men. So it's like Galadriel and a group of wimpy men, and the guys are like struggling against this ice elf. But then Galadriel comes in. Ooh, Galadriel, she's a girl. She's strong and mighty and wonderful. And she fights this ice troll, and literally within 10 seconds, it's dead. And when she fights it, she does it in the most like, I'm like so awesome, and like, you're just a lowly ice troll or lowly man. Like, that she doesn't even look at the guy that she's fighting, this ice troll. She just like turns her back to it and like, and like jumps around it, and somehow it's dead. It's just too easy. Like, and it's not interesting watching that. It's just, there's no sense of a suspense that you think, oh man, she could die here. This has like some weight to it. There's like, real consequences that could happen here. Nope. And the guys, like, she's fighting it and she's totally destroying it, and the guys are just like, oh, okay, you handle it, girl, you go, girl. Like, they're not doing anything, they're not being helpful. So it's just so heavy-handed. So those are the two big scenes that were really kind of painful to watch. But the rest, the rest wasn't, it was much more subtle, I guess. And it wasn't so in your face. So, you know, those scenes represent like maybe 3-4 minutes of the 2 hours that I watched. So I can forgive them for that, I guess. You know, it's a small portion of a big thing. So yes, it was painful. Yes, it was annoying. Yes, they always have to have women and people of color on in every single scene, and they have to get the most airtime, at least 50%, because that's mandated by Amazon. That definitely, you can feel that. But for the most part, it's not as bad as I expected. I was really, really worried that it was going to be very heavy-handed. And as I said, those 2 scenes, yes, were heavy-handed, but the rest wasn't as bad. So that's that element. But that wasn't what I would have complained about. That's not the thing that I would say is a bad thing. What I would say is, and this is a problem with wokeness in general, what they'll do is that they'll take a character, like whatever character it is, like I'll go back to that Alrondir, I think it's Alrondir, that character. You know, they obviously, like, it's obvious like that he is there because he's black. That's the only reason. It's not because he's a great actor. It's because he's black that they put him in the role. And, you know, if you believe that, oh, we need black representation, sure. We got black representation. He's there. He's black. He's there. Okay? So the problem with that is we know that as an audience because it's obvious that that's them, that, which always takes us out of this of the story. If you feel like there's like this forced representation, you'll be taken out of the story. Like, I would have liked it, you know, because the Harfoots, or, you know, these like halflings, a lot of them were very multicultural. It was very weird. I would have just had them all be black or all be whatever they wanted to be. Like, you know, I wouldn't have bothered having them some white, some black, some Indian. It just didn't make sense. I would have just had them all be like whatever monoculture you would have wanted. But back to the elf. But just so you know, I'm not against black representation or people of color representation. I'm just against this multicultural thing that just doesn't seem to fit. So back to the elf. Now, he is not a good actor. Sorry, straight up, he's not a good actor. And what happens is people will judge the fact that they did this race swap and say, well, gee, it's obviously that this guy's a diversity hire. You know, why did you pick him? He's not a good actor. He just doesn't, he comes across as like one face. Like, it's like one face the whole time. Is he shocked? Is he happy? I have no idea. It's just like the same, like same like expression the whole time. His lines are just so wooden and blah. It's just, he doesn't come across, he has no charisma at all. Sorry, the guy just doesn't appeal to me in any particular way in terms of a charismatic character. And I can think of lots of great people of color, if you really love that term, that could have been great actors and really made that character shine. He wasn't it. And so what happens is, you know, people will kind of attach themselves to that, and they'll say, well, look, you know, you diversity hired and you made this crappy thing. And it really does detract from the show. I mean, they spent almost $1 billion on this show. They could do better. Like, get some proper cast. I'm sure that there's lots of talented actors out there that they could have chosen. But so that's one thing that really bothered me. And I would say, like, it's more noticeable in that diversity hire character. Now, the same is true about other characters, that they are actually terrible actors too. Like, I just felt like they didn't really, like Galadriel, not a great actress. Sorry. She's just got the same stare, same boring. She's just, and no charisma. I heard her described as both a Karen and a Mary Sue. And I think that's a really excellent description of her. she comes across as like always wanting to ask for, where's the manager? It's like, I feel like that, and just like this kind of Karen like element to her. I don't know why. It's just like something about her. And then the other thing is that she's a Mary Sue, that she just has no like depth other than like everything's perfect for her. Everything works out for her. She literally goes across the Atlantic in terms of travel. And then she's dropped off at the other side of the Atlantic and then swims all the way home. It's like, hello, this is not realistic. Come on, give us something that makes sense. It's like things like that. It's just like, I don't know. So she's a bad character. And she's white. It's not that but people will complain about her, but they won't but more so they'll complain about this poor, this poor person of color, this black guy that basically, yes, he was a diversity hire. Yes, because that will make it stand out more. It's just one of those things. I think it detracts from the whole motivation. If they had just cast a really great actor, like it's sort of like when they cast, and I talk about this all the time because Samuel Jackson, like when they cast him as Nick Fury, great actor. He's Nick Fury. It's like it worked. That can happen. So as long as you put in a good actor, people after a while, yes, they'll get annoyed at the beginning, but when they see that it's a great actor, they'll be like, oh yeah, I can see that. I can work with it. So I always thought this whole idea of representation is really bogus. I almost want to say something a little bit political, that a conservative will vote for somebody based on the platform. They'll say, okay, is this person bringing a great platform? Is he or she or whatever bringing a great platform? And they'll vote based on that. Okay, so for example, in Canada, we're having a leadership election for the Conservative Party, and one of the candidates is a woman, a black woman. Okay, and she's like running for the Conservatives. And she's my second choice. Actually, I really like her, but there's another guy I really like even more. So it's based on the quality of the character. And there's like 5 other people, but she would be my second choice. But it's based on what she represents, the platform. I don't really care that she's black. I don't really care she's a woman. I care about what policies she has. Now, if you look at somebody on the left, they'll say, well, I'm voting for her because she represents women and she represents women of color. So they'll vote based on the personality and based on the identity. And that is the biggest problem with this whole woke thing, that people are, their opinions are formed not based on what they actually provide to the show or to the movie or to the country or whatever. They base it on just pure identity. And I think that's pure racism. I actually see that as super racist, that way of thinking. So I always thought representation in terms of, having a character that is race swapped or whatever as being very racist. That you feel like you have to have that character being whatever race, just so that you feel like there's representation. Well, that means that you are racist against whatever group that character really was, because you can't feel kinship to them. That seems a little bit racist to me. Like, so I when I see like a character that is black, like Black Panther. I was a big Black Panther fan as a kid. I was a big Hulk fan, and he's green. And I was a big fan of like non-white characters. Like Bruce Lee I was a big Bruce Lee fan, because they represented me in a way. I didn't look at their skin color or whatever. I didn't really care about that. That wasn't the big thing for me. It was what qualities did they represent? They represent some cool person, and I really like those characters. So to me, that is the best type of representation. I don't really care about all this identity politics. So that's something that I think is a big hindrance to how well they can make a story, especially with Rings of Power, that they have this handicap, that they feel like, oh, we have to have a certain number of, like, they actually have mandate that women or people of color have to have at least 50% of the dialogue within the show. And that kind of makes it hard to tell a proper story when you have this kind of rules that are just there for, not for the sake of the story, but for the sake of political agendas. And it really does hurt, and you can feel that it hurts, and it's like a weight, a extra baggage that the writers have, that makes it challenging for them to write a good story. And I can really sense that with Rings of Power, that there's a lot of times where they miss opportunities because they don't have the good storytelling, or the storytellers are obviously weakened by this whole mandate. So those are my thoughts on the Rings of Power. And I'd love to hear people's comments. I'll probably get in trouble again. I always get in trouble. Like, I think I'm pretty moderate in terms of the way I think. But everyone always treats me like I'm an extremist. So it just never works out for me. But I'd like to hear your opinions. What did you think of the Rings of Power? I felt it was a little slow, looked pretty. And I wish there was a lot more character development. I just wanted to know a little bit more about the personalities behind the characters rather than their identities. I'm curious what other people felt about that. As I said, it was probably best for me to watch it the way I did, where I'm working and have it in the background, because it wasn't engaging enough to watch by itself. And this way it felt sort of watchable. Actually, it wasn't too bad because, I was doing something else. It was, So, yeah, that's my opinion. I'd like to hear your opinion. I'm looking forward to actually watching the third one. So that's a good sign in a way. So yeah, thanks for watching. Bye for now.